I'm Annie, and then thank you again for inviting me to this platform, because I'm going to be sharing my creative journey from being loser to lucid, and I'm super excited to do so because I think there's some really...
Can everyone?
Next slide. So I think this is a question that needs to be addressed. Who even are you? Which is a very fair question, because I think sometimes I even ask myself that question, who even am I? Because I think this question is super hard too, because your identity constantly changes with time as well. And so I guess in this context, I am a creator. And then next slide. But that brings me into tip 1, which is no one advocates for you more than yourself. So this goes into celebrating and sharing your wins, especially when it's appropriate. And I bring this up too because I think growing up as an Asian American with immigrant parents, I was kind of taught, be polite, be humble, and all of those traits, like I hope I am. But I think what ends up happening sometimes is you end up pushing it, and so it becomes you're withholding your joy. So for example, if you do win a competition, if you do win something, you're kind of like, it's no big deal. This happens to people, it's fine. And you kind of brush it off. And for me, I'm like, no, it's okay. It's okay to be really happy and to be really proud of what you've done, because it took so much time and it took so much energy, and it just took a lot to get to that point. So it's okay for you to share that. And so this is what tip number 1 is. And so with that, I am going to deliberately flex. And I'm not talking about flexing my muscles, because clearly I have not been working out during shelter in place time, but I'm talking about flexing some of the stuff that I've done. And I'm going to be deliberately name dropping and number dropping in order to showcase a little bit of who I am, as well as just build up some of my credibility. So you're like, yes, I trust Annie as a creative. So next slide.
Awesome.
So flex number 1. Hopefully the GIFs load correctly, but flex number 1 is I am a face filter creator on Instagram, and showcased here is my face filter rainbow connection, which is a face filter for the month of Pride. And what's super neat is that this filter hit the 1 million plus mark, which none of my filters have done that. And it's funny because I'm like, I've been creating filters for, I want to say a long time, but I guess it hasn't been a long time, but this is the one filter that's done really well. Wow. And so the other thing too was that what's even neater was that it was featured as Instagram's favorite Pride filter. And then you see that on the right side where it's in their Instagram effect gallery. Wow. So that is flex number 1. If you want to try out my filters, you can do so on my Instagram. I'm going to drop my plugin as well, which is @lucid_.
Awesome.
Next flex. I'll just say next flex whenever I need to go to the next slide. So for this, for a while I was working with Instagram pet influencer at LIUCID, and LIUCID has close to 500,000 followers on Instagram and is super handsome. And it's funny because I think it's also a very LA thing where it's like pet influencers, what? But for that, I created some social assets, and I designed, illustrated cards, stickers, prints, and then some apparel as well. And I did some quote unquote modeling, and you can see that in the pictures. But what I realized with that is that after doing it for some time, I was like, actually, I could probably do something on my own, / I could probably create merch on my own. And I think that's coming up, but I'll probably start small with stickers and then memo pads. That's in the works. So follow me on Instagram to see that. And then the other thing too to note is that I think it's super important to support other people in their dreams, but at the same time, do not forget about your own dreams. And so that's kind of where I'm also at. And then next flex. So for this, this is, my next flex is that I illustrate characters with 6 eyes, and then that's kind of my signature, and I think it stemmed from one being I like numerology, and so 6 is the number of balance. And then the other thing too that I don't really say is that I think, because these characters kind of came about when I was in college, and I think I was craving boba or something, so I was thinking boba eyes. But anyways, so for this was a competition / challenge initiated by Adobe, and it was partnered with Pictoplasma. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Pictoplasma, Pictoplasma is an international character design conference / festival, primarily based in Berlin. And so there were a couple of rounds to this too, but essentially for this project, their challenge was that you would use your photo and then you would place your character onto it. And so my whole concept was the world can be a lonely place, but in my imagination, if I could put, my sidekick in there, it would be that I wouldn't feel as alone, because simple things like, getting something to eat, like I would have someone to join me. And I think I called this piece Waiting for You. So my imaginary friends would always be waiting for me, so I wouldn't be lonely. And so that's what I submitted. And then for the first round, I think it was that they would pick 25 finalists in a pool of 508 works. And so I was one of the finalists. And at that point, I was like, okay, that's the highest I can go. I can't get any higher than this, because I don't know, what are the chances of, because the next round was they would pick 5 out of the 25. So I was like, okay, I've already pushed my luck. Being 25 out of the 508, I think that's as good as it gets. And so the funny thing is that when I was in Vancouver, my friend she went to the restroom, and so I was in a museum in Vancouver, and I was just checking my phone, and I get the email where I attached it in here where it's like, congrats, you've been selected as one of the fellows. And I was like, what? Are you sure? Is it me? But I just remember being so mind blown because of what that meant. And so this is flexing time, where, what does that mean? What does that mean to be a character design fellow? And so what that meant was that I got a year's worth of Adobe Creative Cloud for free. I got some Adobe swag. I got to attend exclusive workshops, and my travel to Berlin plus accommodation plus food was all covered, and the conference was also covered. Wow. And so I was also a special guest. And then the other cool part was that I got to show my piece in a group gallery show, which was hosted in a facility. I think that was a crematorium, but it was a really cool space. And I got to showcase alongside artists like Julian Glanders and Jaron Braxton, which are all very super talented and amazing artists. So I was like, I kind of feel legit. So that was that flex.
That is amazing.
And then, yeah, I was like, are you sure? The other thing about that too was that, because Adobe 1324 is an initiative for creatives who are 13 to 24. So when I was 23, I actually applied as a fellow. I applied to the competition, which was a different competition at the time, but nothing happened to it. No one cared about it. That's fine. And then I was like, okay, when I'm 24, obviously I'm going to apply again, but that also means that that's your last shot. Like, if you don't make it, that's it. So I was like, you know what? Do it for the heck of it, but don't expect anything out of it. And then this happened, and I was like, what? Yeah, it just blows my mind. And then that's one of my flexes. And then the next flex is I do wonky lettering. So this is for a woman's magazine, or sorry, a Woman's Thing magazine, and this is their money issue. And they asked me if I wanted to do like a editorial piece for it, and I was like, sure, why not? That's always been on my list of something I wanted to do. And so I did that, and then that magazine actually won a Red Dot Award. And for those of you who aren't familiar with what the Red Dot Award is, it's an international design competition. And since the magazine won for its communication design, which it's like beautifully designed, I also got my piece inside the book. And then so technically, I can say, you know, I was published in a magazine and a book. I think that also reminds me of a quote where it's like, it's the quote originally, I think, is no man is an island, but I like to change it into no person is an island. There's no way you can do it alone. And it's not meant for that, but slash the journey of life slash creativity isn't meant to be one that's solo.
Amazing.
Okay, so that's that flex. And then my next flex is pocket-sized you. So this is something that recently happened, which is I got a project grant from Adobe. And if you're not familiar with this program, it's because it literally just started this year. And what you can do is you can apply either for a project commission, or you can do a project grant. So in the case of a project commission, you can have Adobe select something for you to do that they think might be a right fit, or you can do what I did, which was, you know, propose your own personal project. So I proposed Pocket-Sized You, and Pocket-Sized You is all about, you know, collecting, ooh, my AirPod dropped. Sorry. But it's all about carrying around a pocket-sized friend who, you know, shares their nugget of wisdom with you. And I kind of thought of that in the concept of like, wouldn't it be neat to have like a little friend, like you could carry around your little friend in your pocket, like pull them out, and then if you need, you know, some advice or something like wise, they would just tell you. And so this is what that project is. I'm currently still in the works of this project, so if you're interested in participating, you can DM me or message me or like reach out, and I'll find a way to make that happen. So that's nice. This project. And then the funny thing too, I'm gonna add is that prior to this, I applied for their residency program last year, got rejected. Applied this year, also got rejected. I applied to their AR residency program. I got an interview, and then I got rejected. So then when this...
It is tough.
Yeah, but I think it's funny because people don't see like all the behind the scenes, right? Of like, this is what people see, but people don't see like, actually, I've been rejected a couple of times.
Yeah,
and so I want to share
that is so true. Thank you for sharing that. And I think we should definitely encourage, and this is something that I wanted to encourage the attendees today, but also the ACAC as a community, that don't give up. If you believe you deserve the grant that you're applying, or things that you wanted to, or community that you wanted to be part of, keep on applying. Like, don't give up.
Wholeheartedly agree. And so with that, when I got the email for this project grant, I was kind of, I was very confused because I was like, wait, when did I even apply to this? Because I honestly forgot that I applied to this. And like the week before, I actually got my email saying from the Adobe AR residency program, I got an email saying, sorry, we didn't go with you. And so I was just like, obviously I was upset about the past things. So this, to me, I was just like, it didn't even like register. I was kind of like, huh? Are you sure? Like I was rejected all these times. So I don't, what? So that's this. So aside from creating all this stuff, I've also liked and made a point to share my experiences and my tips along the way. And this was when I was a designer at Ogilvy. So I shared, oh, also I'm gonna do a little bit of flexing too, where if you're not familiar with Ogilvy, Ogilvy is part of WPP, which means that it's just one of the big 5 ad agencies. So I'm showing this as a flex because I think the platform itself, We Are Next, is a really good resource for beginning talent navigating the ad agency / ad industry. So We Are Next, I'm going to do a name drop. We Are Next is started by Natalie Kim, and she is recognized as one of Forbes 30 under 30 in the marketing and advertising industry. And she does an amazing job connecting and supporting young talent through this platform and community that she's built. And besides the flex of that, in 20, I'm like, how do I say years now? Sorry. In 2008, I was about to say 2008, but in 2008, I wrote an article about my favorite topic, which is rejection. And so in it, I kind of go through my story, which I'll get into later, but I did that and I was a little bit extra, so I decided to illustrate my own GIFs as well for this. And for that, later on, she actually, I guess, actually what happened was later on in 2019, I was a guest on her podcast. And in that, I just went over what I did as a designer at Ogilvy, and then also shared some of my tips as well, which I think is super neat because if you followed my journey from the very beginning, you would know that I would have never thought I would be sharing my stories or doing any of this on such like a public platform, just because case in point is, this is a little story time, but back in the day, when there was book fairs, I used to have my mom buy me books because I was too scared to interact with strangers. So I would always be like, Mom, can I get this book? And then she would have to like pay. And then I would just, stand way far in the background so I don't make eye contact with strangers. Stranger danger. But what ended up happening was my mom, like one day she was just like, here's the money, go buy it yourself, right? You're not stealing, this is fine. And in my head, I was like, oh man, honestly, I would rather be stealing right now. But then the other part of my mind went into, okay, if I was stealing, if I got caught, that means I would have to interact with people, and I do not want to do that. Wow. So the best bet / best option was, you know what? I don't want the book. That's fine. I never wanted that book anyways. That's cool. So that's kind of my mindset and like the level of, I guess, anxiety that I held when and jitters that I held when I had to talk to other people. And I think what I used to do was I would just like shake around a lot. I still kind of do that, but not as like violently. And so I think what alleviated my anxiety was that I decided to embrace who I fully was / who I thought I was at the time. And that goes into my next slide of I was a loser. And I'm going to embrace that. So the next slide. So when I say loser, what I mean is that this was kind of a moniker of, this, I guess, word that I made up combining my last name with the word loser. And this is a still that I pulled off when I was in college, where I was using that moniker of like, I'm a loser. But I think mainly this moniker stemmed because, I was this quiet, shy kid, and I wanted to be, someone who was rebellious. And so I thought like, what is artsy and rebellious? And I was like, street artists. Those people are like so, so cool and super rebellious and like bad to the bone. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a street artist one day. And so in my head, I was like, okay, what do all these street artists have in common? They have monikers, right? Like if you look at Banksy, if you look at Human, if you look at Cause, they all have a name that they go under. And so I was like, all right, I'm self-deprecating. I'm going to go with loser. And yeah, clearly I didn't end up pursuing my street art route because I realized that I was very soft and I just cry about a lot of things. So yeah, that didn't happen. Next slide. So what ended up happening though was that over time, the word loser kind of stemmed into a new meaning. And so for me, this became now a tale of an underdog, or maybe not, because the way I saw it, it was through the lens of David and Goliath, and not in the biblical lens, but rather in Malcolm Gladwell's lens, where what Malcolm Gladwell says was that on the outside, what people saw, you know, David was this tiny, little guy, and Goliath was this huge, I guess, monster, if you will, right? And so what people saw was, no chance. David has absolutely no chance. Look at Goliath, right? But what they didn't realize, slash what they couldn't see, was the inside, which was David all along had the skills to defeat Goliath. And on top of that, Goliath was, I think, mentally a little bit slower, because one of the, I think, texts that Malcolm Gladwell references is that, Goliath said, David, come a little bit closer. And he said that because I think he was seeing like doubles of David, and he was like, I don't know, like what's going on. Whereas David was like, yo, I'm a sharpshooter, so yeah, I'm gonna win. And David knew this, right? But clearly, I think what happens is a lot of the times what you're seeing is you're seeing outside, and outside doesn't necessarily reflect what's on the inside. And so I was like,
just to give you a heads up, it's 7:40 now, so we wanted to leave at least 10 minutes or at least 5 minutes.
Okay. Yikes. Okay. I've gotten way too into this. Okay, so essentially, with that, I was like, I'm David, I'm small, but I'm capable, and Goliath is design, and I can beat Goliath. And then the other thing is that I didn't have a design / advertising degree, so I can make it on my own through side projects. And then the other thing was that feeling like a loser, though, that sucks. And I felt like a loser because I got rejected. And then next slide is that tip number 2 is that rejection happens because of timing, fit, or maybe it's both. And so for me, the main 2 reasons why I felt rejection was, one, I got laid off, and the second was, I'm going to call it the snail mail letter thing. And then next slide. So when I was laid off, the question I carried was, now what? Because I think the second thing was that the story that my friends and I had was, if you made it to New York, you can make it anywhere. But clearly I did not make it into New York because I got laid off. So does that mean I can't make it anywhere? And that was something I had to wrestle with. And at that point, I was clearly at my low point. So I was like, I'm moving back to LA. So tip number 3 is that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Even if it doesn't feel like it right now, you should trust the process and trust the journey. And this is an exact quote that my then project manager from New York told me when I told her, I'm nervous that I'm even here. Like, what's going on? But yeah, trust the process, because I think at that moment too, I was like, there's nothing I can do except surrender to those emotions. And with that, I had to feel, the feelings. And then the other thing was the snail mail letter thing, which I'll just touch on it really briefly. Essentially, I mailed a snail mail letter to my friend slash detailing my crush, never got a response back, which is a response in itself. And so I was like, okay, this is all right. This is a lot. I felt like, Laura Jean in the To All the Boys I Loved Before, except the only commonality we had was we wrote a snail mail, because the end result did not happen in the way the movie did. But through that, I decided to channel those feelings into, next slide, this project called Letters of Feels. So I think part of me wanted my then friend to see it as well. But essentially, the tagline was everything reminds me of you. And obviously, as time went on, you became different people. But I was just letting my emotions flow. And next slide.
This is so cool. I love it.
So tip number 4. Thank you. Tip number 4, feel your feels. And that was one of the ways that I was trying to feel my feels, because that's kind of the beginning of healing, right? You have to feel it. And if you don't, it inevitably surfaces back up, and you don't want to have that happen, because when you do feel your feels, what happens is that you live a life that's more true to yourself and more authentic to yourself, and it gives other people permission to do the same, right? And so, it's also conducive to growth if you do feel your feels, even if it's super uncomfortable, which it is. So realizing all of this, next slide, I said, you know what? Do not call me loser. I do not want that name anymore. Call me Lucid, because it's no longer a story about me versus, the world. It's not even a story about me winning all the time, because in the previous story, I was like, yo, I'm David, I'm gonna win. This is more of a story about me trying to look for clarity through connection, right? Whether that's with people, with ideas, or however you see fit. And the other part about Lucid was light. It meant, light. And so I kind of thought, I want to shine, and I want other people to shine as well. And I think, like your spark sparks others. And that's kind of what I thought when I thought of the name Lucid. Although, to be quite honest, it took a while for me to change it to Lucid, because I was so stuck on like the loser story. And then tip number 5 is stories matter, so you better tell a good one, right? And so the thing I like to think about that is that it directly, like your quality of life is directly connected to the quality of your relationships. So it's not only the relationships you have with other people, but also with yourself. So are you telling yourself things like, I'm a loser? Because if you are, inevitably you will become a loser. Trust me, I've been there. So that's tip number 5. And then next slide. So what does it mean to be lucid? And for me, what that means is being more me, stepping into myself even more, and wholeheartedly living in my truth. And one of the ways that's expressed is through my YouTube videos. And let's see, since we're running out of time, next slide. So for the YouTube stuff, I just give tips and stuff. So if you want to know tips, you can follow that. And then also for that, you get to see my behind the scenes, because I'm pretty transparent, I would say, about my process. And then the other stuff that I do is I do AR work, which I already mentioned, / I also do AR illustrations sometimes. And then the next slide is for funsie, I also do some illustrated commissions. So if you are into illustrated commissions, hi, hello, DM me for more info about that.